Thank you for staying with us. In an interview with the news agency of Nigeria yesterday, following Walter Onnoghen's conviction at the Code of Conduct Tribunal, Professor Utomi reacted to the judgment, saying, "The Times suggests that the point that we have always made about the importance of integrity is critical for nation building and individual sense of unity." He's here now for more insights on that statement and on other issues of a national and international concern. Prof, good to have you again on the morning show.
Thank you. I'm glad I can join you.
Well, we'll come to Walter Onnoghen later. I've just quoted what you said, but let's start with Delta State, the politics of the APC in Delta State. I mean, the court has ruled, the High Court has ruled that it's your faction, the Cyril God faction, that is the legitimate faction in the conduct of the primaries. And the last time you were here, you talked about the APC in Delta State, and you complained about, how all of that was conducted. Do you feel a sense of vindication?
Absolutely.
And what does this translate into?
It says everything that needs to be said. From the beginning, the whole process was deliberately flawed. And the people are, unfortunately, the greater losers from it all. But that's backwaters in manner of speaking. It also has shown that the real people committed to a rebuilding of the state are the crucible that's left. People wandered off because, now the balance is tilted because of the abuse of process in the APC. So many drifted away from the APC to the PDP. Now, it was a good thing to shake off all those fair weather guys and begin to look at people who are interested in rebuilding the state. The state is desperate for rebuilding, and we're going to try and do it in many ways. We're announcing a shadow team that is going to work, use the Freedom of Information Act to hold the incumbents to the fire continuously on a daily basis. Government must act in the interest of the people. This is not about positions, it's not about office, who is there, it's about the people. How do you serve those people? How does a state that receives so much manage to be one of the most terrible places to live in? I mean, you just go, education is in such a bad state. I mean, you saw the success videos. I mean, who wants to look at those kinds of schools and not feel a sense of shame? You go to infrastructure, it's pathetic. We must make those who are in charge work for the people. We've had enough of this nonsense, Nigeria-wide. We can't allow, look, the way we are going as a country, you know all the numbers. I think the last time here I gave the report from the Brookings Institution study last year. Nigeria has overtaken India as the biggest collection of absolutely poor people on earth. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation study that projects that in a couple of years between Nigeria and Congo, DRC will have 40% of the poorest people on the planet. I don't know how elite in Nigeria can go to sleep hearing these kinds of reports and relax because they're driving SUVs. They're just walking themselves into a revolution that will consume all of them. All of us, actually, because nobody will come out of what will happen in this country, given the kind of abuse we have visited on our people. And I like particularly to bring this point. Education is so important. And by education, I don't mean PhD. I mean, just understanding how history has evolved. Look at the history of the world. Look at the prospering peoples of the world. And look at those who are not prospering. 200 years ago, Spain, in the middle of conquest, in Latin America and all of that, gold was flowing in. The elite of Spain were living it up. Because they did not invest in their people, in production. Spain, compared to the rest of Europe, look at where it is today. You can go from place to place. By the way, the book on this whole nonsense is out already. You've seen it.
Congratulations.
Why not?
Yeah, I was going to come to that. Your argument about the complicity of the middle.
The middle class. The complicit middle.
The middle class in Nigeria is also a victim. That you are putting all the blame on the middle class.
That unless that middle gets active, it will continue to be the victim. But it is historically given the mission to challenge the rot. because it is the stabilizing factor in society, the middle. But above and beyond, the follow-up book to this, I say it's a 3-volume project. Follow-up volume to this is more academic, more is the kind of book Nigerians don't quite read. That one is titled How Politics Underdevelops Nations. And in that, I do comparative work. I take Nigeria and Venezuela, for example, and compare with some Asian examples. I take, the people say, oh, Singapore is small. I take the Gambia and compare with Singapore, you know, and so on and so forth. And I make a case from a body of literature that has come through the years about why nations are poor. You know, I wrote a book of that title years ago. But you go through the works of Robinson and Acemoglu, Why Nations Fail, which came 10 years after my own book, Why Nations Are Poor, on basically the same thesis, you know. And I think Thomas Sowell's attempt to look at all of these ones in, and anyway, all of those. And I think that book will help us, those of us who will feel like reading it.
But why the religious side to that book? Because it's titled In the Devil's Den. You say you want to title
Yeah.
Is Nigeria the Devil's Den?
Are you kidding me? I would be got there.
On Good Friday. You are labeling Nigeria the Devil's Den.
No, but this is an academic play on, you know, I mean, this chap's book, which I actually have in the back cover of that, you know, essentially sees Nigeria, unfortunately, as a country that's literally been hijacked by mafioso. But anyway, let's leave it and come back.
So let's talk about politics in general and leave Delta State now. The APC, you know, won the presidential elections, and now all focus is turned to the National Assembly. But it would seem as if the party doesn't seem to know how to manage its winnings.
Well, I mean, it's too early to judge. People can change tack. I am part of the product of a certain era where a government was changing tack, but people didn't wait enough for that change to take place. Alhaji Shehu Shagari came in his first term, did a lot of good work that people, only benefit of hindsight now, people begin to realize how much good work was done in that first term. But there was corruption, there was this whole business of laissez-faire, and people were unhappy about that. And then he realized that he needed to move on a different track. Then he began to bring in a new kind of team. Then your Nosso days, the Siodos, and all of those people became part of his new team. But before he could settle in, the army came. And Nigeria has gone progressively worse since then. It's possible that the government can turn that same track and offer something different. So I think it's too early to condemn yet. Let's see how things go.
Well, you had cause recently to write a piece about the quality of public conversation in Nigeria. I mean, there was upon a time in this country, we had very robust debates, intelligent analysis on the pages of newspapers. Even the newspapers seem to have dropped the ball. Mm-hmm. What do you think is responsible for this? Is it the rise of ethnic politics, which you pointed out in your response to Mr. Femi Kusa, when Igbo people were being intimidated in Lagos during the elections?
Yeah. No, I don't think it's a rise of ethnic politics. A few politicians who are playing this up. It's always a few politicians trying to take advantage of those kinds of things and then try to play it up. I think it is essentially a collapse of culture in Nigeria. There's a value frame that has given way. A combination of things. It's not any universal analysis wouldn't do it. But I think a number of things came together. I like to talk about the convergence of soldiers and oil. You know, the centralization of power and authority in a command system that took away from the kind of give and take the premiers had with the prime minister, say, that was a critical factor. And then money, oil. And, you know, First of all, government didn't need to tax people to get revenues to run the country, so it ignored the people, sort of. The people were very happy to be left alone by this government. I mean, when I was young here in Lagos, chasing people to pay tax was a big deal. You know, you were around that Idiaraba area. Western region just ended around Mushi. People running from Western region from tax collectors to run into Lagos to escape it. All those kind of things stopped because government didn't need the people's tax. They had oil money to play with. People were not bothered. The government stayed where it is. And accountability began to be dropped. Then there was a civil war. Civil war it's the impact of civil war, I don't think has been analyzed enough. All the civil war stuff I've read have not come, in my view, to the core of the damage of the civil war. One of the things that wars do is that survival, the only thing that matters is survival. You just want to stay alive. What do you need to stay alive? They've taken over this part of territory. You're moving to another area for safety. The thing you need most to survive is, do you have some cash in your pocket to pay somebody to do? Cash over became king. You know, we say cash is king, but cash began to be worshipped. And that is, if you look at the way people look at Igbos, for example, before the war, Igbos were, in terms of the stereotypes of culture, kind of people who can have $1 million in their bedroom and wear bathroom slippers walking around. That was the stereotype. Today, Igbos are perceived as people who, hey, you know, sure, this is money, this is money. And my feeling is that part of what the war did was it made cash so important that some people began to idolize it and to worship it and began to define everything. The combination of all these factors led to a collapse of culture. We had the value system in this country. People looking at SUVs. You know, you in those days, you came in with a big car into some kind of place and we don't know what you've done. And you're immediately an object of contempt. Today, that's the way people are attracted to you. Look at the kind of car he came in. And all those things, this collapse of culture, has led us to a point where it doesn't matter whether things are done right or not. It doesn't matter whether party primaries were conducted. You are powerful enough to announce somebody. That's all that matters. Impunity became central to the culture of Nigeria. And no country like this has ever made progress. Read human history. So we've got to say to ourselves, is it time now to think about our children, to think about sustainable progress? This oil that is part of this whole mess, look at where it is today. We're not struggling. No, the price may be rising, may not be rising. And the message is simple. Whether it rises a little today, comes tomorrow, Iran did that did not do that. Oil is being replaced as fuel. You know, years ago, the Bank PHB advert joked one day cars will run on water. It's not such. They will be running on water very soon, I assure you. Battery technology, all of those things. U.S. is pumping so much from shale, it's going to become a major exporter of energy. Other technologies, you know, like that are more environment friendly, are coming and all of that. And we're going to wake up one day, even if we're still discovering more oil deposits, we're going to find that we really are not earning so much. But we've not done the most important thing. We've not invested in our people to become more productive tomorrow. Then you will see misery and poverty. Do we want that to be our future? So the future we need to create for ourselves now is based on how we begin to invest in our people. I had some numbers even in the radio as I was coming about the 60 million Nigerians are illiterate or something like that. Now, the crisis of now, the issue we should confront, like literally create a war cabinet around, are these factors that prevent us from being a productive people. Education is central to that whole project. Essentially having the right infrastructure to facilitate when people produce. And a clear national strategy, we don't have one. We just talk up and down. We don't have a clear national strategy, which will then...
Well, the Buhari government has the ERGP.
ERGP
yes.
is not a national strategy. It is trying to extract, if you will, a premium from execution. It's a very fine way to deal with execution. But it is not a, when people just wake up, they say this is where Nigeria is going. You don't even think about it. You see Nigeria wanting to dominate these territories based on its factor endowments and having an industrial policy that is focused, that is so-called a latent comparative advantage. So this is Nigeria products in this value chain. Nigeria expects to become dominant in them. Okay, tech. The future of Africa is significantly tech. If we really get it in this book, The Next Africa, I think that's a pretty good job.
Let's talk about some topical issues. Yeah. The IMF made some recommendations to the Nigerian government recently. Also the World Bank, just completing the spring meeting in Washington, D.C. One of the recommendations is about removal of fuel subsidy. The Minister of Finance says, well, that's not possible for now. The financial derivatives just came up with a bulletin, the bulletin for the month of April, and they are saying that, look, if Nigeria removes fuel subsidy, we'll reduce the national fiscal burden by about 8%. The IMF is also saying the multiple foreign exchange regime that we operate is unsustainable, it's, makes no sense. But the Minister of Information says, in fact, it is very good. So what's your take on all of this?
Well, I think the biggest problem we have is we seem to have everybody making their own policy. This one is going in that direction. We need, that's the point I made about national strategy. It's got to be clear where we are all going, and people who can then pull in and go that way. It's a very important thing to be managed, communication. There's no question about that. We know the politics of that whole challenge of subsidies, no subsidies. So you expect somebody who wants to manage information, manage in some way. But when we are clear where we want to go, I'm not one for or against subsidy, quote unquote. I mean, the Chinese chose to subsidize capital for their people. And the world was screaming, but they kept on subsidizing capital until it became the most productive country that's available. And it became the workshop of the world. And now they can deal with you and say, okay, yeah, what are you talking about? But they subsidized capital for a long time because they wanted to become a production base. If we are clear in a strategy that fuel prices need to be low because it will help us produce better in this manner, but I'm not sure that that's what we're doing. We're just wanting not to get a pushback from some people who are being subsidized, you middle-class people, for example. I think that when we are setting where we want to go, then we can manage the communication of what should happen, where things should go, and then we can better organize our economy. Because what we're doing is really just loading a machine gun and shooting ourselves in the foot every day.
So we lack the proper economic policies, is what you're trying to say?
Yeah, we lack the clear thrust of economic policy from which the tributary policies will come.
So let's look at the economic team of President Muhammad Buhari as we count days to his second term. How would you judge the success otherwise of this economic team? And do you see the possibility of the same old hands being retained?
I don't like the conversation of persons. This country is very mundane, oh, this man, that guy. No, I think what we need is a national strategy. And this is beyond partisanship. This is where we're going as a people. These maybe are the kind of people who can facilitate getting there and all that. But trying to judge this economic team that, we did under Jonathan have some very interesting people, and yet we had some wrong outcomes. And so it's not about these persons or those persons. It's about consensus as a country, about where we're going, what will be better for our children, what will stop poverty, what will get people off the streets.
Well, people make policies.
Oh, yes. But if we get together and achieve a certain consensus on where those should be, then look at the Americans. For all the noise, Democrats, Republican, we know where American policy thrust is. We just have shades of how you feel about this and about that. In fact, one of my favorite definitions of the difference between liberals and conservatives in the U.S. offered by Daniel Patrick Moynihan, who himself one of the greatest scholars out of Harvard, who was a senator in the U.S. And it goes like this, is that the central conservative truth is that it is not politics, but culture that is responsible for the progress of a society. The central liberal truth is that politics can change a culture and save it from itself. So what he argues is basically that the Democrats, Republicans just see the same thing from the perspective of one saying is by, our values that we get there. The other saying, well, we can use politics to tweak those values and get there. Bottom line is they're both saying the same thing.
Well, Prof, I know you don't want to talk about persons, but there is at least one person that I would like you to talk about. That's the governor of the central bank, Godwin Emefiele.
Oh.
In recent times, he's been taking some measures, the Monetary Policy Committee reducing the monetary rate, MRR, and then hoping that will lead to lending, even if they didn't touch the cash reserve ratio. He's also, some people have also said, well, it is under his watch that you have a woman signing the Nigerian currency for the first time. And there's been a lot of, articles praising him. I think all of this is a build-up to the end of his tenure in June. Do you think he deserves a second term? And if he gets a second term in that chair, what else do you think that the CBN should be doing differently?
Now, you see, Ruben, the danger about asking people to talk about persons is that in church on Sunday, Godwin sits right in front of me. So, what do you want me to say? He will reach back and hit me in church. No, but seriously, he's done some very interesting things. But I don't think that the whole economy has followed through on some of what the idea of development financing. Somebody has to provide capital for growth. Since the whole economy wasn't seeing it, he started doing what necessarily is not central bankers' job work. He became the economic development manager of the country. And I think that he needs to be praised for some of those. Some of the things they did, all these multiple exchange rates have hammered those in the past. They don't, in my opinion, make for the best a sustainable way to build a market economy. If there was clear purpose, for example, he can argue, and I can accept, about some of the banned items and all of those. But if there is no consistency in flow-through, that's why I talk about industrial policy based on endowments, based on a certain goal you are trying to achieve. You can then choose 1, 2, 3 things and say, we want to become global dominant players on these value chains, and we'll use industrial policy to protect those, but not general. These arguments, it's a very interesting one between a Korean, South Korean professor of economics at Cambridge, who wrote the book Bad Samaritans, Ye Chang, and Chinese, again, economist who served as vice president at the World Bank until very recently, their view of industrial policy. Whereas Chang argues for more broad, says this is how South Korea made it. We provided all these industrial parks and protection and all of that. And Justin Lin argues that it is better to take, the point I've argued for many, many years here, take your endowments, take something that you can globally compete in, and then protect that particular area with certain goals of dominating certain value chains, the so-called latent comparative advantage. I think in many ways some of what Godwin tried to do, Mr. Emefiele tried to do at the central bank was to go down one path, but the follow-through policy was not there to make that, something that will, so it was just him struggling there in the central bank.
Well, yesterday, in your reaction to the embattled CJN, you highlighted the importance of integrity to nation building and cohesion. And so let me ask you in the context of President Muhammadu Buhari's cabinet, even though you refuse to talk about persons, the president has said only those with integrity will make it to the cabinet. Does this suffice for you? Because we talk about proper strategy and policies, but we do need the right
capacity.
People, right capacity, exactly. So does this suffice for you as a criteria to say those with integrity will make it to the cabinet?
My friend Bismarck Rewane once said that it is better to have to be a little corrupt and capable and to be incompetent and upright. No, I think that it's possible to find competent people who have integrity. Any small effort will find them across the country. The problem is that many of those kinds of people tend to get shut out by this system. And so you don't see them in bright lights. They're not on your show, but they're there all around the place. And anybody who makes any serious effort, I can find them. I think that integrity is very important. And I believe that competent people who have integrity can be found.
Well, I mean, you founded a body called Center for Values in Leadership, which organizes, workshops, tries to generate ideas. And also now I see that the CVL has gone into book publishing. By the way, what happened to the prize? The prizes that we used to, yes.
Yeah, there was a book prize. You know what we were trying to do in many areas where nobody was paying attention to get activity? We created a book prize. We gave a few of them. Then NLNG came with plenty of money. And we said, thank God somebody has moved into this space. but Professor Oshofis still harasses me that we need to go back
to this issue about values in leadership. When you say that in responding to Walter Onnoghen's conviction, and you talk about integrity, that means I get the impression that you don't share the view that is a victim of a witch hunt.
No, I'm not. I tried not to get into that whole area at all. I'm just making a generic comment about the importance of integrity and that maybe these things highlight them. But I think also that it's a very complex, very nuanced issue that we try to get into as a country in this area because we have a problem of weak institutions. One of the institutions that still had something is the judiciary. And if we're not careful in the way we're going, we could completely damage that. And that's why I thought that process should have been differently managed. I'm not happy that it was managed the way it is managed, but I wanted to make a generic point about the importance of integrity. And that's the problem with reporting. Attribution is the soul of journalism. And many times when reporters come to you, they already have their story, but they want to attribute something, and they take a slice of your comment, which fits into the slant of your story, and goes that way.
Well, let me take you back to a point that Adesua raised earlier, when she asked a question about how the APC is managing its victory. I mean, you are a member of the APC, and what we hear from the APC, either from Adams Oshiomhole or from your good friend Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, is a winner-takes-all kind of proposition, and all of that drama is being played out in the politics of the leadership of the Ninth National Assembly. What do you think? Do you sometimes talk to these people? Because you seem to be on a different wavelength.
Yeah, completely different wavelength. I'm inside the APC to fight to change the APC. The APC, the way it is right now, is a national burden. Nigeria isn't making progress because of that kind of politics. And we must change the APC so that we can change our country and save it. I think at a time when we should be focusing, this country is in the moral equivalence of a war. And when you have leaders in wartime, what you look at, you create war cabinets of rivals. Lincoln did that with the cabinet of rivals. But we're not going too far going to Lincoln. General Yakubu Gowon did it in Nigeria when General Gowon built a cabinet of people who were all more capable than himself, let's be very frank, of their Awolowos, their Nahoros, the Shagaris, and co. He built a team of rivals that was on a national redemption mission. Nigeria is at that point again that we need a national redemption mission. We don't need warlords trying to gain advantage over that. This is not the time for it. Our country is dying. We need serious people who have one thing, love. To lead is to love. If you don't have love in your heart, you can't lead a people. And we need people who have love in their hearts for the people of this country. That's what's required for Nigeria today. But instead, you get these warlords who are trying to exclude. I tell you, one of the nicest things, you may not consider it that I think has ever said to me, it was about 10 years ago, actually, at an event. I think it was Binga Daniel was probably governor at the time. An event, his father's, I don't know what it be. And Dr. Aolo Odusumu said to me, you know, I see how they're trying to shut you out of the system, the way they tried to shut my father out. It struck me that her father never gave up, even though they tried so hard to shut him out. Serious-minded, committed people who care must not give up, even though these kinds of warlords will keep trying to shut them out.
I was just going to ask you, you say you're in the APC to fight this sort of governance style and mentality, party politics. I was going to ask you, how is that fight going for you?
Well, it depends on what you means. Me, I'm looking for nothing. I just would like to see a better society. Yeah. I actually despise people who live on politics. I think that people who make a career, a life, politics, are doing society a disservice. I've frequently said that nobody should hold public office for more than 12 consecutive years. You go from commissioner, governor, senator, you're a social parasite. You're a social parasite. You should come out from your hard work as a farmer, as a teacher like I am, and come into the arena and make a difference for 8 years and go back and do what you do for a living. If it's not like that for you, you are a parasite on society. And most of these characters who are making this country difficult to make progress are social parasites who call themselves politicians.
Well, let me take you to the issue of the Civil War. You referred to the Civil War. We had Kingsley Moghalu on this program a few days ago, I think last week.
Yes.
And the issue of the Rwanda genocide, the commemoration of the Rwandan genocide came up. And he was saying, later, either in the studio or, off camera, that, in fact, he thinks that Nigeria should have been commemorating the Civil War as a way of reminding, Nigerians of what exactly happened and making long-term restitution. He was recommending what Paul Kagame, did around the Rwandan genocide recently in Kigali. What do you think? Do you think we should still keep, talking about the Civil War, or we should just move beyond it?
I think that part of the problem of Nigeria's growing illiteracy is because of the fear of remembering that Civil War. I think that part of the reason that history got out of the curriculum is that people didn't want it taught to people. But I think that is a big error, because it means that you're likely to repeat the mistakes that were made before. But if people experience it, know why it happened, then they'll be less likely to do things that will lead to it happening again. I have visited the Genocide Memorial in Kigali. Nobody who goes through it comes out the same. He will say to you, man should not go down this path again. And this is what museums are about everywhere in the world. You go to Washington and you go through the Smithsonian system. You go through all of this and you learn something that you think man should not do again or should do something to prevent from happening. But in Nigeria, we somehow don't manage to preserve anything. I have supported a group that is trying to do something about that. They have a memorial, a Biafra memorial now in Enugu, and Didi Muneli and others memories, And I think it's a very important thing to work towards.
Well, I do still have another question for
We'll let the Prof go now.
Okay, well, but just one more thing. One of the recommendations by the IMF recently is that Nigeria should prepare for the shocks that may come from either a hard Brexit, a no-deal Brexit, or a soft Brexit, because of the economic connection between Nigeria and Britain. I don't see that in the conversation, in the responses from either the Minister of Finance or the CBN. How should we prepare for an eventual Brexit if it happens?
Well, quite frankly, Brexit could, even though I think I'm not British, so it's their problem. I think they should have gone about it differently. But if it eventually then does happen, I think it would actually benefit us in some manner of speaking, because they will be looking for new trading partners. And so we should prepare ourselves to increase trade with Britain. But we must now be ready to play in a bigger trade arena. Nigeria is not even a member of the African Continental Free Trade Area. Can you imagine that the people who can dominate a trade area don't think smartly enough to lead it? And by the time we just come reluctantly into it, we have no choice, we're going to get into it. We will be the backroom boys. So we must change that. And the fellows who are driving this are all Nigerians. ADB president is Nigerian, Afrexim president is Nigerian, and Nigeria is walking around like a... Do you know how much Nigerian lawyers could be making if they could be practicing in all these African countries? We have some of the top professionals in these areas. And so a few manufacturers who've gotten things wrong drive policy. You know, there's so many things about how we run Nigeria. That's classic workshop for a serious academic.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Utomi. Thank you for always, honoring our invitation. Now, congratulations on this publication. Why not? Citizenship, state capture, creeping fascism, and criminal hijack of politics in Nigeria. Wow, those are very strong words. Congratulations, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll take a short break now. When we return, there will be more conversation around some of the topical issues, particularly the conviction of Justice Onnoghen. This time, we'll be having lawyer and public analyst Kayode Ajulo joining us. Stay with us.